the topic of my thesis is technology adoption and upscaling of detailed farm level models. And what does it mean? In the next 30 minutes, I will tell you. So let's begin with some agricultural history. I grew up in a small village in China. And when I was a kid, I saw buffaloes working on the field. And in harvesting season, the whole family must contribute to harvesting, even very little kids. And traditional agriculture is labor intensive because the technology level is low. And I also experienced a time where big combines came to us and they harvested for us in a few hours. All the grains were harvested and also threshed. So this is a time of mechanized agriculture, which is characterized by big machinery and fertilizers. So now come to the precision farming time, and our GPS can position our machinery very precisely, and the sensors can tell you what each plant exactly needs in terms of water, nitrogen, and so on. So maybe you haven't really seen it in real life, but digital farming is really happening around us. So some innovative farmers, they already started to use farming robots and farm management software to make farming more efficient and more environmental friendly. So digital farming technologies are characterized by artificial intelligence, by cloud computing, by robotics. As agricultural economists, we are especially interested in the adoption of these kind of technologies, whether farmers will adopt digital farming technologies or not, and how do we model the impact of technology diffusion, and also the investment limit, how much farmers can pay for such technologies. So in the 3 chapters of my thesis, I will cover these 3 topics. Let's begin with the first chapter. So it is adoption and diffusion of digital farming technologies. This is a literature review which is already published on agriculture systems. And in this paper, we aim to develop a conceptual modeling framework for adoption and diffusion of digital farming technologies. The background information is that until now, we still have like a very, let's say, few adoption studies on digital farming technologies compared to traditional agriculture technologies. And this makes our work difficult. But luckily, due to the similarity between precision farming technologies and digital farming, we could use the experience from precision farming technologies. And thus, in our research, we also included these adoption studies of precision farming technologies. So we did a systematic literature review on Web of Science, and we included 2 types of adoption studies. So the first type is empirical farm level studies, and the second is agent-based models. So what are the difference between these 2 types of studies? So empirical farm level studies are most of the time econometric models or qualitative interviews focusing on one farm, asking about a farmer's opinion, what are the influencing factors for the adoption decision, and using econometric models to test which factors are impacting farmers' adoption decision. And agent-based models, they are simulation models. Most of the time, the modelers should set up all the decision-making mechanisms in the model, and they see the simulation, the adoption and diffusion effect in the model. So we found that for farm-level models, there are already adoption studies on precision or digital farming technologies. They're quite advanced in this perspective, but for the large-scale agent-based models, they are lagged behind. And that's why we could only find the adoption studies of general agriculture innovations, for example, fertilizer, a new type of crop, and so on. From these two types of studies, we found 32 and 27 studies respectively. And we summarized the influencing factors from these two types of studies into our result. So let's look at the result from the empirical farm level studies first. In this bar chart, you see on the y-axis, we summarized the influencing factors of farmers' adoption decision into 6 categories. So farm characteristics, operator characteristics, interactions, institutions, attribute of technology, and psychological factors. And on the x-axis, these are the number of cases, similar to number of study. For example, when you look at farm size, we see that the total length of the bar is 42. So that means that in all of these studies, there are 42 studies or cases included farm size as an influencing factor. And 33 of them find that farm size is an important factor influencing farmers' adoption decision. And you can, depending on the length of all the bars, you can see that empirical farm level studies mostly focus on farm and operator characteristics because here the bars are longer, and institutions, attributes of technology, and psychological factors here are often overlooked. And now let's go to the results from agent-based models. So on the y-axis, we still have these 6 categories of influencing factors, but on the x-axis, these are the authors of different studies. And the dark color means that this factor is a direct trigger for a farmer's adoption decision, and the light color is a factor that is included in the model somewhere else. So we can see that when you look at the triggering factor, most of the time it is the relative advantage. So most of the time it's the profit maximization. We can see that the agent behavior in ABMs are still largely characterized by farm profit maximization. And when you look at the interactions among different type of agents, you can see that is the colors here are pretty are not so intensive, and that means that ABMs are still quite limited in modeling heterogeneous agents, although modeling heterogeneous agents are one of the big promises of ABM. So based on the results, we developed a empirically grounded conceptual framework for modeling, adoption, and diffusion of digital farming technologies. So this framework is based on the diffusion of innovation theory and also the theory of plant behavior. So in the theory of plant behavior, they assume that the intention to adopt a technology or not is determined by the attitude of the farmer, the subjective norm of the farmer, and also the perceived behavior control. So you can see that our framework reflects the behavior concepts and determinants of farm adoption behavior. And we also connect the evidence from farm behavior with the system interaction. So now, so much about the first chapter. Let's go to the second chapter. So it's about the impact modeling of farmers' technology adoption. When we say we want to model, or say we want to assess the impact of farmers' technology adoption, does it mean that we can simply sum up the effect of individual farms? Of course not. Upscaling impact modeling means that we want to see the general impact of many farmers together. So there is non-linearity inside. When we do that, we should not overlook the interactions among the farmers, and we also not overlook the feedback from the market. And right now, when we say we want to simulate or the technology diffusion impact or the impact of farmers' technology decision, we have two types of simulation models. The first type is farm level simulation models. And in this type of model, the behavior of one farm is looked at one time, and by separating their behavior from the behavior of other farmers. So that means the farm makes decisions totally on his control. And the other type is agent-based models. So in agent-based modeling, they not only look at the decision-making of one individual farm, but also the interactions among the farmers. And the agent-based model can also be spatial explicit. That's why you see the grid here. And for example, FarmDun, which is a farm level simulation model developed by our institute, ELR, it has very detailed technology investment information, also very detailed information on environmental indicators. But like I said, they do not consider the interactions among farmers, and there's no feedback from the market. So it's not like really realistic. And on the other hand, Agripolis, which is an agent-based model developed by IAMO, this is Leibniz Institute of Agriculture Development in Transition Economics in Halle. And in this model, the technology investment, the information about technology investment is less detailed, and also the environmental indicators are also less detailed. But the advantage of Agripolis is that it models the interactions among farmers and also the feedback from the land market. So when you match the advantages and disadvantages of these two types of models, you see that why don't we combine these two types of models and to use both the advantage of them. But in practice, when the number of farms getting larger, and also when the number of land plots also gets larger, we have the difficulty in computational time, in computational resource. So when you directly combine these two types of models, the simulation speed will be very slow. And so in this chapter, we propose to use a surrogate modeling approach to solve this problem. So this paper is already published on Journal of Agricultural Economics. This is a collaboration with CP2 with Professor Yugen Gal and his PhD student Jifeng. And surrogate itself means someone or something that replaces. It is a substitute. So surrogate modeling means, in our context, so we in the original farm level model, FarmDun, from the last slide, when we only look at the arable farms, it takes 77 input variables, for example, the price of crops, price of machinery, and farm size. And after the profit maximization process, the model gives you 248 output variables, for example, the production level of crops, use of machinery, the profit at farm level, and also the environmental indicators. So surrogate modeling means that instead of using the original FarmDun model, we use replacement of this farm level model. In this case, we use neural network in deep learning to do the surrogate modeling approach. So that means instead of directly integrating FarmDun into Agripolis, into the agent-based model, we integrate the surrogate model of FarmDun into agent-based model. So in this case, we can combine the advantages of these two types of models, and the simulation speed will be much higher. And so in our paper, we trained 4 different types of neural networks: the multi-layer perceptron, residual network, ResNet, and long short-term memory, LSTM, and bidirectional LSTM. So these are the 2 types of neural networks that are commonly used and are also up to date. So they have different structure inside the neural network, and they take different formats of input, and they are also good at dealing with different tasks. And our objective, one of the objectives, to see how different types of neural networks behave in our case. And when we trained different neural networks with different depths. So when you see that at this column, we have for each type of neural network, we trained 3 variants with of different depths. And so MLP1 means that this is MLP type of neural network with 1 hidden layer. And when we compare the average R square on the test set, we see that among the 248 outputs, the average R square could also be very high. So the BioLSTM3 achieved an R square of 0.99, which is very high. Also, the lowest R square, 0.937, reached by ResNet 18, is also not that bad. And so we see the general performance of neural networks, and now we want to see the inference time of these neural networks. So that means the speed of prediction of these neural networks. So inference time means that how much time a neural network needs to predict for 1 data point, in our case, for 1 farm. And so we compare the inference time of different neural networks, and you can see the best model according to the R square is by LSTM3, and it needs 0.02 seconds to predict for 1 farm, which is 257 times faster than FarmDun. So 257 times faster than the original model. And the fastest model here, it is MLP3. This is more than 200,000 times faster than the original model FarmDun. So also we developed a more complex evaluation metrics to evaluate these surrogate models besides R square, because because R square is the super compressed criteria which can lose a lot of information. So we developed another 3 criteria. So the first one is the consistency of biovariate relationships. For example, we look at in the predicted data from neural network, is the relationship between the nitrogen applied and nitrogen leaching on the farm still the same as we get from the original model? And the second criteria is the accuracy in capturing corner solutions. That means if a farm decides to not, let's say, plant wheat this year, can the neural network capture this 0 decision? So this is also our example, as I explained. And the last criteria is the accuracy in holding constraints. So for example, the constraint of farm size. Let's say if I have 50 hectares of farm, it will be funny that neural network predict that I have 100 hectares and give me, oh, you can plant this and this year. It's not realistic. So we develop these evaluation metrics to assess the performance of different neural networks. And here are some results. So in these 4 plots, you can see on the x-axis, these are the sample size, which means the amount of training data used to feed to neural networks. And the y-axis are the 4 criteria we developed in our evaluation matrix. And the different colors means a different type of neural network. So we can see that when we increase the training data from 1,000 to 50,000, the performance of all neural networks increase a lot. But after 100,000, we see that the performance of all neural network tend to be stable. So also when you look at the different type of neural networks, we see that BioSTM, the orange one, is always dominating in all criteria, but his follower, the blue one, MLP, is close to the best one. But remember that in terms of the inference time, the MLP is much faster than the BioSTM. So so much about chapter 2, last chapter, and about the investment limit of a farmer's investment limit for digital farming technologies. So we asked the question, how much can farmers pay for weeding robots? This paper is also published on Precision Agriculture. It's a nice collaboration with Christoph Pamaya and also my supervisors. And I borrowed the cool picture from Ali from CP4 and with his permission, of course. And so this is our Bonnie Rob. Hopefully the name is correct. And so the background information is that agricultural robots are experiencing a rapid advancement from the engineering part, but the economic understanding is lagged behind. So that means when we want to ask how much can farmers pay for weeding robots, so we have the difficulty that now few farmers have experience with robots. How can they say how much they want to pay, how much they're willing to pay, no? And what factors are most relevant for farmers' investment limit? It is technically very challenging to vary technology attributes once the robot is designed. So in this paper, we found an innovative approach to answer these 2 questions. So we used the data from KTBL. KTBL is a German abbreviation for Association for Technology and Structures in Agriculture. So the good thing about the KTBL dataset is that for each specific plot defined by the plot size, the tractor power they used on this plot, and also which type of farming system, organic farming or conventional farming, for each crop, they have 2 dataset, and which tells you the revenue and the cost structure for this plot. For example, from this plot, what is the revenue for organic sugar beet, and from this plot, what is the direct cost for seeds, for fertilizers and so on, and also variable cost, fixed cost for machinery and labor. They also tell you, this is the most important part, they also tell you what is the cost for each working step. So for example, for this organic sugar beet farming, in May, they have to do the manual weeding with hand. So 85 hours of human labor is invested in this plot, and the depreciation and maintenance costs of machinery are also given in the dataset. So our idea is that we replace the part which the weeding robot can do. So we have 2 scenarios, baseline scenario and robot scenario. So in the baseline scenario, we say, okay, farmers do weeding using the current method. So in organic sugar beet farming, they still use manual hand weeding And in conventional sugar beet farming, they use the sprayer mounted on a tractor, driven by a human. And in the robot scenario, we say that, okay, we replace the manual weeding part with a mechanical weeding robot. And also in conventional farming, we replace the sprayer, the tractor sprayer part with the spot spraying robot. So now let's say we look at the break-even point between these two scenarios. So we calculate the maximum acquisition value, MAV for short. This is the price of the robot that renders the same net profit as the current weeding method. So this means that if a farmer pay the MAV price, then he or she is willing to use the robot by keeping the same profit level as the current weeding method. And so how do we define the cost of weeding robot? Like we see, we have for each working step, we define the cost. And now for the weeding robot, we also need to define the cost because we want to replace the current method with the weeding robot. And so we did interviews with robot companies and asking about the definition of the technology attributes and the ranges of these technology attributes. And also according to the KTBL database and literature, we summarize 5 technology attributes, that is area capacity, setup time per plot, repair and energy cost, and weeding efficiency and supervision intensity. So area capacity means that the amount of hectares a weeding robot can weed in its total life, in its whole life. And setup time per plot means that how much time the technician need to set up the weeding robot before it can go around on the field. And repair and energy cost is clear. Weeding efficiency means that how many percentage of weed can be removed by the weeding robot. But for conventional farming, we define it differently. We define it as the amount of herbicide the weeding robot can save. And supervision intensity means that, for example, 100% of supervision intensity means that during the whole working time of the weeding robot must be supervised by a technician, whether this is a farmer or this is someone from the robot company. And also we want to see the impact of wage rate, the impact of labor cost in impacting the investment limit. So we defined the wage rate of skilled labor, which is the technician that supervise the robot and also set up the robot, and also the unskilled labor. So here is it defined as the seasonal labor that do the hand weeding. And so how do we run the Monte Carlo simulation to calculate the break-even prices? So we have, so first of all, in the first step, we have a random combination of these 5 attributes and also these 2 wage rates. And then for each plot size and tractor power, we loop for each combination. And for each combination, we calculate the net profit of baseline, meaning that using the current weeding method, and we also calculate the net profit of robot scenario, meaning the net profit using the robot scenario based on the combinations of different parameters. So at the end, we solve the X, which makes the 2 profits the same. And now let's look at the results of this, how much farmers can pay for weeding robots. So as you can see, this is not the farmer's willingness to pay, but it's an objective calculation based on the cost and cost data. So on the x-axis, you can see this is the MAV, this is a break-even price, and the y-axis are the counts, so the number of simulations we run. And so this blue color is for organic farming, sugar beet farming, and the yellow color is for conventional sugar beet farming. You can see the break-even price for organic farms are much higher than the conventional farms. So let's say on average, organic farms can pay 200,000 euro for a mechanical weeding robot. In comparison, conventional farmers, they can pay like 20,000 euros or 10,000 euro for a spraying robot. So we can see that organic farms can pay substantially more for weeding robots than conventional farms. That means the adoption and diffusion of weeding robots are likely to start among organic farms, because organic farms can benefit much more from weeding robots than the conventional farms right now. And the availability of weeding robots for or more stringent pesticide regulations might affect the adoption decision of conventional farms, because lacking of labor is now one of the barriers for conventional farms to transform to organic farms. Now, with the availability of weeding robot, it's no concern anymore. So this might change the adoption decision of conventional farms. So we also calculate the impact of the different factors. Remember, this is also our second research question in this paper. So to calculate the impact of the different factors, we divided the range of each parameter into 4 quarters. So we calculate the average break-even price, the average MARV in different quarters. The difference between Q4 and Q1 should indicate how important this factor is, without considering the different unit of each factor. So the result shows that this is very interesting, for organic sugar beet farming, the area capacity is the most important factor for weeding robot. So this 200,000 euros means that a farmer can pay 200,000 euros more for a robot that has a high area capacity than a robot that has a low area capacity. For conventional sugar beet farming, it is even more interesting to see that the most important factor is the supervision intensity. So this minus 22,000 means that a farmer can pay can pay 22,000 euros more for a robot who needs very less supervision than a robot who needs much supervision. So because supervision cost is also important for conventional farming. So this are the results from the chapter 3. Now we have a short conclusion for the contribution of my thesis. So my thesis contributes to the modeling of technology adoption and its impact modeling on large scale. So we first developed an empirically grounded modeling framework and for adoption and diffusion of digital farming technologies. And then we trained surrogate models of detailed farm level models to upscale the impact modeling of technology decision adoption. And then in the last chapter, we look at the importance of different factors in determining farmers' investment limit. So of course, there are some still limitations of this thesis, and we can still do something in the future. So our conceptual modeling framework has not yet been used for actual policy analysis. So in the future, we can use our framework to model adoption of digital farming technologies. And also the surrogate model we developed in our chapter 2 has not been integrated to ABM studies yet. This is also the ongoing work in MindStep project. And in the last chapter, due to the data structure of KTBL, we cannot calculate the break-even price at farm level, but at plot level, this might not be so useful, but it is a very important information already at this stage. So thank you very much for supporting me. I need to say thank you to my supervisors and my friends, colleagues at ERR. Also need to say thank you to PhenoRob and MindStep, who supported my research during the last years. And thank you very much. I'm very looking forward to hearing your comments and questions.